values of diversity, humanity, big tent, and to exclude the peoples whose families are being bombed right now, as it was in the early 1960s and, before, when the Democratic Party, claimed to be for the working man and the working person, while millions of workers all through the South were effectively in a system of indentured servitude, and they refused to give those people political representation. It is a gigantic moral gulf that is troubling, disappointing, heartbreaking, and deeply, deeply personally upsetting.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, award-winning journalist, author, professor. His new book is The Message. That does it for our show. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Juan Gonzalez in Chicago.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 98.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis.
Good afternoon. My name is Yusef and I'm serving as a co-host today, along with the talented and well-informed Coach Leah. And we would like to thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to follow Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, Ta-Nehisi Coates, today's guest. And if you have something to say, please join today's conversation and leave us a comment. On Tuesdays, this program is rebroadcast or broadcast live on KFAI in the 1 to 2 p.m. time slot. And you can also check us out on Insight's YouTube channel, on the website of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is the flagship trade group for all of the Black newspapers in the United States. And we welcome comments and feedback from those of you who are listening or viewing us this afternoon, and we will periodically provide you with information on how you can share that feedback with us throughout the broadcast, telecast, webcast this afternoon. So with that, let me bring Coach Leah in and say, good afternoon, madam. How are you today?
Hey, good afternoon, Yusef. I am pretty terrific on this Tuesday. Thank you for asking. It's always a joy to be hanging out on the conversation with Al McFarlane and with you. Yes.
Okay. I understand that we have at least 5 topics from the sports world. There seems to be a lot happening, both joyful and sad, in terms of the passing of some key figures and other events. Why don't you take us away and tell us what some of those items are?
Well, let's start by talking about, let's talk about the NFL. Let's start there. And our wonderful Minnesota Vikings are
best whatchamacallit in the league. What do you call it? The best percentage or games or record? Best record in the NFL?
They're undefeated. They're undefeated, and they have a 5-0 record right now. And if they're only second to, I'm sorry. So they're number 1 in the NFL North. So,
okay.
I'm sorry, not the NFL, NFC North. They're number 1 in the NFC North with a 5-0 record. And then my second favorite team, which is the Texans, are 4-1, and they lead the AFC South. And then their only loss this year is to guess who?
The Vikings?
Our Minnesota Vikings, absolutely.
Okay.
And I was getting a lot of heat from some of my friends. Everybody everywhere knows that I am a die-hard Minnesota Viking fan. I've been a fan of the Minnesota Vikings since I was a little girl.
The Texans are from Houston, right?
That is correct. The Texans are in Houston, and so
Does Kansas City have that same record, 4-1?
Kansas City, I'm pretty sure their record is 4-1. Is but yeah, so the Minnesota Vikings are the only undefeated team, to my knowledge, in the NFL right now, which is
There you go.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal, absolutely.
Well, I
And
understand they tried to give it to the Jets, and the Jets didn't want it.
well, it was a very competitive game against the Jets. They actually played that game overseas, which is phenomenal as well.
In
And
London.
they were, yeah, in London, absolutely. And it was an early morning game, and a lot of people were recording that game. And, a lot of my friends who are churchgoers recorded that game and then watched it later after they got out of church. And so they'd be able to see the whole game and enjoy that afternoon. But my husband and I were in our season ticket seats at the Texans game to watch that game against Buffalo. And wow, what an amazing game that was. Probably one of the most exciting games as just a fan that I have ever attended. I mean, honestly, actually, the reality is that I rarely, if ever, am going to a sporting event and consider that something quote unquote fun to do, because I'm typically working, right? And it's been that way, whether it's game ops or covering as a journalist, I'm usually working a sporting event. And so when my husband and I were thinking about getting season tickets, I knew that he was such a huge Texans fan that I supported that decision. But I told him, I said, hey, I don't know how many games I'll be going with you. That'd be something fun for you to, take one of your besties when you guys have a great time as besties out at the football game. But as a diehard sports fan, I do like to go, and I still am very interested in football. My second favorite sport to watch. And so, my husband's kind enough to ask me before he assumes I don't want to go, do I want to go? And so the last couple of home games I have wanted to attend, and I will tell you, the game against the Bills last Sunday did not. It's just a phenomenal game, and it went down to the final seconds. And with the kicker again, we talked a little bit about the kickers a couple weeks ago, but the kicker winning the game for the Texans in the last seconds of the game. And it was just, like I said, just a really exciting game. And but I want to let my friends and family from Minnesota know that I am still a diehard Minnesota Viking fan. And you best believe that when the Minnesota Vikings played the Texans, that I had purple and gold on my heart and on my mind during that, and was not sad at all that they beat our Houston Texans.
Well, and Buffalo's a pretty tough team this year.
Oh, they are. They
Not pushovers.
They're not at all. And I will tell you, earlier in the game, it did look like the Texans were a lot better. But then we saw at halftime, after halftime during the third quarter, that they were able to come back and get back in the game fairly easily. And so we were like, well, wait a minute now, are we going to be able to hold on and win? And I just kept yelling from my seat, play to win. Play to win. Don't play to lose. Don't play to not lose. You know what I'm saying? And so to really stay on the aggressive side of things, and you sometimes as a fan you want to think that they actually did hear you on the field when you're screaming from the bleachers or from your seats. And so I don't know. That's kind of fun. And the people that we sit around. That also have season tickets with us, over the past couple of years, it's kind of fun to see the same people. You look forward to seeing them, and it's just a kind of a really fun atmosphere. I look forward to seeing some Vikings games in person in the next in this year, as well as in the upcoming future, and perhaps as just a fan and not just working the game. So yeah.
Okay. Well, excellent. We also had a sad passing this week, did we not?
So it actually was last Monday. we saw the loss of Dikembe Mutombo, an NBA star, who passed away on the 30th at the age of 58 from brain cancer. And what a lot of people don't understand is, where did this come from? He was just diagnosed. He was diagnosed just 2 years ago with the brain cancer, and but there hasn't been a lot of news about his diagnosis, what exactly he had, how sick was he. We didn't see him in the public eye, but that doesn't seem to be, unusual, because typically when an NBA player goes into retirement, unless they're, intentionally on screen or on TV or in the news or in the media because they work in the media, they tend to enjoy their life behind the scenes and just kind of being normal, quote unquote, normal individuals. And so even though, after Dikembe's retirement, excuse me, after his retirement, he decided to, to not really be in the limelight per se. He still was doing a ton of work, a ton of philanthropy. He played for 12 seasons, first of all. Let's just start there. And one of the reasons he played for so long is because he wanted to make sure that he made the money to be able to send back home, because, it was his life's desire to help open, hospitals and just really take care of the community that embraced him over in Africa. And so he did that, and he was able to do a lot for the healthcare industry in Africa. And it just, it's just ironic that obviously something that was a cancer then would, cause him to, take his life. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about the brain cancer that he had from excuse me, from an article that I saw, and it kind of answers questions about brain cancer after the death of the NBA star. And it was a story I found by Ryan Ormond, and he's the director of the Adult Brain Tumor Program at the University of Colorado. And we've heard about the University of Colorado a lot lately, because that is where Deion Sanders is currently the head football coach. And he's been doing a ton of great work, bringing a lot of visibility to that campus. And so that's how it really caught my eye as well. But he was born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2015. And he served as a longtime global ambassador for the WNBA. And in 2022 was when his family revealed that he was being treated for the brain tumor. And so what we see are just some overall questions and answers about the diagnosis and the treatment, the treatment path that go along with brain cancers. And so one of the things that we've learned is that patients who primarily have primary malignancies frequently get diagnosed because they're symptomatic. And then they get the imaging, and then they go to a neurosurgeon, and that's the most common route to a diagnosis, and then treatment. And then depending on the tumor type and the imaging, they may undergo a biopsy or surgery, and then often need additional therapies like oh my gosh, excuse me.
Like chemotherapy.
Chemotherapy, yes, and radiation. And so then the next question is, so is it possible to be treated without surgery? And is surgery, usually, or is surgery usually the first line of treatment? And they're saying that surgery is typically the first line of treatment. And so, Yusef, do you know of anybody personally that has been diagnosed with brain cancer?
Quite a few people, in truth. I know it's very difficult to beat. And
Yes.
The earlier it is detected, the better the chances for survival are. But in many instances, it is not detected until it has advanced significantly. And, this goes to what type of health care that people have and what type of access to quality care, because brain cancer, pancreatic cancer. There are some, being a cancer survivor myself of 15 years.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, brain cancer, and I received 6 different types of chemotherapy plus 3 different types of radiation for 6 months. And the chemotherapy itself can cause cancer. The word chemo means chemical, and chemotherapy is both radioactive and it is also poisonous. So the treatment with chemotherapy or with neurosurgery are both very critical, and any type of brain surgery can have a neurological impact on your nerves, your mobility, your speech, your eyesight, your balance, and the basic quality of life functions of your body. So
Sure.
it's a tough one to beat. Yeah.
So it's, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No. And people ask me about my hair because I had a fro for most of my life. And I tell them that they should talk to my oncologist because my oncologist is my cancer doctor, is totally responsible for my hair now growing in an opposite direction than it did for most of my life. But I'm happy to still be able to comb it and stand up and look in the mirror and do that.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. And so
a lot of the friends who I had that came down with brain cancer, sadly, are not alive today.
sure, no doubt. Well, as you mentioned that,
we're still in the early stages of learning so much about cancer that I read somewhere where in our lifetime, 1 in 3 people, because all of us have cancer cells in our body, some are malignant and some are dormant. And it was when those white blood cells mutate and refuse to die that the mutated cells are in fact the cancer cells that then spread through the glands and throughout the body to other organs. And it's requires a lot of prayer.
It does. Well, I would say this. So a couple things you bring up really good points as you were just talking just now, that one of the things that it's so important to try to live a healthy, active lifestyle. Now, just like you said, there are cancers that lay in our body regardless, right? But what are some things that we can do ahead of time, right? Well, one of the things you can just do is try to eat foods that are going to help us to remain healthy. Try to, do other things. Keep moving. Keep your body moving, keep your brain active, so these are things that you can do regardless of any other thing. And so, but I do know, I have several friends that have been in just amazing physical shape and still succumbed to cancer. And so, it's not, like you said, prayer is very, very important, but at least if you're looking to try to live a healthy and active lifestyle, then your chances of having to succumb to cancer are very, very much more less likely. And in Dikembe's, in his situation, he was diagnosed in October of 2022, and is so 2 years later was when he succumbed. And so it is 2 years, a common lifespan for someone with brain cancer. And so in glioblastoma, which is a common type of brain cancer, surgery is always followed by chemotherapy and radiation. And if it's another type of tumor, it's hard to say what's necessary. Sometimes it is only surgery, and sometimes it's other modalities, and it depends on what the pathology is for them. But we don't know for sure what his diagnosis was, but we do know that 2 years is a fairly typical time frame for something very malignant like glioblastoma, which is common in his age group. 15 months is the average span between diagnosis and passing. And so,
Coach Leah,
yes.
Michelle Delicious has submitted a comment that some people are saying that Dikembe had recently taken a shot for Vivid, and that may have been the cause of his death, and is wondering if you know anything about that or what you may think.
So I don't know any, I have not done any research on what he was doing, what he was taking, what type of treatment he was on, or anything of that nature. But Michelle's Delicious Delights, I will definitely look more into that. Check with some of my friends on the inside in the NBA world and see what we can come up with. So please look for some answers, hopefully maybe next week, or even in my column on Inside News Sports on that sports page, and I will definitely shout you out and put some of that information in there. What an amazing and great question. So thank you so much for that, Michelle.
Can I ask a question about Dikembe's philanthropy? Because we know that superstars like Steph Curry, like LeBron James, and like Dikembe have been very generous considering the amount of money that they were being paid, and also the amount that they were able to raise for charitable purposes. Steph Curry paid for a golf team at Howard University and paid for equipment and uniforms and blazers and the whole 9 yards. And LeBron James has done a lot in terms of guaranteeing an education in higher education for anyone who graduates from his high school in Akron. And I'm wondering if more superstar athletes that make these astronomical salaries than currently do should get more involved in philanthropy, either in their hometown or within an area where they have experience or some personal connections, because we don't hear a lot about that. We hear about the astronomical salaries that people are paid, and ESPN did a documentary called 30 for 30 Broke, pointing out the
right
the astronomical number of superstar athletes who wind up broke 2 years after they leave or retire, the NBA or the NFL or whatever sport they're involved in. And
Sure.
I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that. Why we don't hear more, or why more may or may not be involved. And some may prefer to do it incognito, without anybody knowing where their money is going, because they want to prevent people from coming to them with their hand out asking for money. But they say the biggest room in the world is room for improvement. And in terms of people who have the disposable income, I can't think of any other group than professional athletes who are in a position to do that, however small or however large, that could make a significant difference in our community, in the African American community in particular. Your thoughts?
So let's talk about Mintumbo and his philanthropy specifically. First of all, like I said, I mentioned he played a very long time because he wanted to continue to make money so that he could help take care of his family and the community back in the Congo. And one of the things that he that a lot of people don't know about him, as well as actually this is very common. It's more common now than ever, where you have professional athletes in the NFL or the NBA that graduate with their degrees or graduate with dual degrees, and that are just absolutely, just they're these very, very intelligent individuals. And so not just savvy with business, but just intellectually, just very, very smart. And so Dikembe was already a student at the University of Georgetown when the head coach, John Thompson, met him and invited him for a tryout, because he was 7'2", right?
Yeah.
And he invited him to try out for the team. And of course, he was a pre-med major when he got into Georgetown. Okay. And so what he did was he directed his pre-med ambitions and then ended up with a dual degree in linguistics and diplomacy. Now, those are no academic to sneeze at either.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so But and I stand corrected. He actually played in the NBA for 18 years, not 12. And
He
so
also had many major national endorsements, television ads and product endorsements, and
exactly. And some even very recently. I think it's the is it the Geico commercial that he's in right now? That was most recent with his little finger wag, and so yeah. But in regards to his philanthropy, though, one of the things that stuck out to me was back in 1996, he paid for the Congo women's basketball team's trip to Atlanta to compete in the Olympics. And he also, picked up the tags for all their team uniforms and all their expenses. And then in his
paid for the construction of a medical center, a school, and a hospital back in the Congo. And people who don't know anything, the conditions and the situation in the Congo are among the worst in Africa in terms of the intertribal warfare, the pollution, the international companies buying up all the land and entire villages and tribes being displaced. It's horrible. And in fact, Mark Twain wrote a book that was banned for 50 years that was called King Leopold's Soliloquy, where he talked about King Leopold, who was the king of Belgium, and the Congo was a Belgian colony, who not only exploited the gold and the diamonds and the precious minerals, but killed so many of the Congolese people that the example Mark Twain used was that you could build a fence with the bodies if people stood upright from New York all the way to San Francisco. Millions of people were killed by the people under King Leopold's orders, and the country has just seen some of the most tragic, causes of death and warfare on the planet. So Nakembe should be remembered as an incredible basketball star, and whenever he would block a shot, he would use that finger wave talking about, don't be trying to come through me and score no points. And the coach and others would get after him because the crowd was really giving him a hard time. So then he started doing it toward the crowd in terms of, don't be trying to tell me how to do my job because I'm very good at it. And so,
well, let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about that whole scenario. So what was happening is he was getting fined by the league for taunting.
Yeah, for doing it.
And
for taunting.
So when he said, well, I'm going to just change this, so instead of it looking like I'm waving my finger to the player, I'm going to wave it to the crowd. And so that's how he was able to get away with it. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. He said that he kept the NBA very well financed with all of his
They were charging him $5,000 for every time that he did it. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Yes, indeed.
But his philanthropy, his athleticism, was just a genuinely authentic human being, very unselfish, very generous, and a tremendous athlete. I became acquainted with him through the Geico ads as opposed to through basketball. And I'm 6'6". You'd think I'd have all the statistics written on the back of my hand, but was a decent human being and a good brother.
Absolutely. So when I think about the fact that in his lifetime, he made the decision to forego his pre-med degrees, pre-med dreams, working in medicine, perhaps being a doctor. So he may have not have gotten an MD, but he actually has 3 honorary doctorates, Doctor of Humane Letters from the SUNY in Cortland, from Georgetown University, as well as Haverford University, and so Haverford College. And so to think about how first of all, how hard it is to get any doctorate, right? And even to get the honorary degree, he had absolutely made an impact while he was still alive. And so he was able to receive a lot of roses and flowers while he was still alive, a lot of accolades. And so that just goes to show everybody him as perhaps a role model for these others that are coming behind him now, that are playing in the league and that are coming from communities that are under-resourced and underserved, that you absolutely can make an impact. You can use the game of basketball to open doors and to make a difference. And we see it time and time again. And I'm looking forward, especially now with NIL and the money coming to the players much sooner, them being able to truly make the kind of impacts that we know that these athletes can make for their communities. And it truly is the communities that have embraced us. I look at the Twin Cities, and I am in no way I don't consider myself famous, but I definitely know how I've made it my life's work to give back to the community that embraced me in the Twin Cities, and it helped to keep me out of trouble and helped for me to be able to achieve a lot of the dreams and things that I've been able to do. So
Michelle Delicious also points out that he had a daughter, Dr. Camille Ma. So it ran in the family.
Oh yeah. Well, and then one of the other things that we are learning now too is that his son Ryan currently plays for Georgia Tech, and so I think that I definitely want to be checking out Georgia Tech here in the next year. And again, Inside News Sports, we send our most gracious condolences to Dikembe Mutombo's family. I'll be writing a little spot about that. So please check out Insight News on either on the obituary page or obituary section or on the sports section for that here in the next couple of weeks. We definitely send condolences. Yeah.
What else have you got for us today?
So let's do a pivot and let's talk about the Minnesota Lynx. Okay. Now they're looking to make it to the WNBA finals for the first time since 2017. Now they've already won 4. Okay. Nobody has won more than 4 championships in the WNBA. No franchise. Okay. So for them to make it even to the finals, they've got to take care of a little bit of business tonight over at Target Center.
Is that second round? Are they still in the second round?
Second round. The series is tied 2 games to 2 against the Connecticut Sun. They lost to Connecticut Sun on Sunday, and it was a decisive win. The Sun just could not miss. I mean, their offensive prowess was just phenomenal. And so now they got to try to come back home and get the energy from the Target Center crowd that gets a little home cooking per se, and see if they can knock off Connecticut tonight at Target Center. And I know I'll be front and center checking out that game. It's it's going to be really great. And the thing that has really hindered the Lynx more so than none is coming out after halftime in that third quarter. I've only seen it a couple times this season where the Lynx go into the third quarter and just really keep a momentum. If they've been leading at halftime, kicking it into another gear coming in to the third quarter from halftime. We've seen so many times, unfortunately, where they just are sluggish and they just seem like a completely different team. Leah B. Olson and I called it the tale of 2 teams. The Lynx are
You're describing the Minnesota Vikings of late as well. Who come out breathing fire in the first half and then score 3 points in the second half and win by 2.
Perhaps. Well, at least they're still undefeated, so we're gonna hold on to that. We're gonna hold on to their coattails with that. But
never mind the heart attack, huh?
Oh, that part, right? But the Lynx. I hope that they're able to not be that team who comes out in the third quarter and has that lull that we've been seeing historically this season, and just really hands it to the Connecticut Sun and can win this game decisively. Because here's the thing, they're only going to have, I think it's only 2 days off before they've got to go into their final game on, I'm looking at Thursday, the 10th of October is the first game of the finals. And so either team, whichever team wins, of course, we're going to be going for our Minnesota Lynx. We'll have only 1 day of travel, and then we'll have to practice and then go into that finals game. And then the New York Liberty, who, you know, won 3-1 against the former WNBA champs and of the Las Vegas Aces, and killing their dream of winning three titles in a row. But they've been able to rest these past few days. And so New York is just waiting now to see who they're going to play against. And this is going to have to be a quick turnaround from the game tonight to the first game of the finals on Thursday evening. So, yeah.
Let me ask you a related sports question. Hurricane Milton may be the worst hurricane that this country has ever experienced, and it's making a direct beeline toward Tampa. The entire west coast of Florida, you know, that in the Gulf of Mexico region, is going to be impacted, and much of the east coast of Florida, the Pacific side, is also going to be impacted. What impact does that have on sports in Tampa, in Miami, in Orlando, and other major cities on both coasts in Florida? What impact does a hurricane, or did the hurricane that just went up the coast and ravaged the Carolinas, you know, how does that impact the sports world and the teams involved?
Well, it definitely impacts, you know, it makes you really put into perspective the importance of sports, right? Because at the end of the day, humanity is the most important thing, right? And so we're always thinking about just who we are as people and how we're preparing for, you know, emergencies and what is our response from emergency and natural disaster and things of that nature.
Sure.
And so it's kind of twofold. Let's talk about the preparation from a team standpoint, and then I put my coach's hat on from this standpoint. First of all, we always check with our players and our families, from the coaches and the front office folk, how are your families impacted? So it's not necessarily just the players that are in the vicinity of the storm, even if your school or whatever is not located in that area, but you have family that's located in those areas. You always want to make sure that you're connected with the families, you're connected with your communities that may be impacted. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, and I know that the Minnesota Lynx and other teams from the WNBA and the NBA have done, is put together resources and donations to give to those communities that have been impacted.
And volunteer.
Yeah, and not necessarily, you don't necessarily, depending on if you're in season, you're not necessarily able to volunteer to go and help, but you definitely can give. You definitely can, you know, like I said, put emphasis in having and motivate other people to volunteer in those impacted areas as well. Use your platforms to do that, and we've seen that time and time again. You know, my mind goes back to Hurricane Harvey and how J.J. Watt was able to raise a phenomenal amount of money that was able through his foundation to be given directly to foundations and organizations in the Texas areas that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And so those things are ongoing. They're not as widely talked about, but they're still ongoing. And so so that's one thing. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is, so say for instance your team is on the path of a storm. Well, you would do for your as a coach for your players and your staff what you would do for your family, and just make sure that if they're advocating for there to be an evacuation, that you evacuate, and that so that you kind of do the reverse, that your players that are in this area that's impacted connects with their families to ensure them that even though I can't leave this where I am to go home per se, that the coaching staff and the universities or pro teams, that they're making provisions for their players to be in safe locations during these times.
Well,
And
let me ask you this. The Timberwolves have a pretty significant presence because of their foundation, because of their resources, and they've done a lot in communities throughout the metropolitan area. Now, clearly, we're aware that the WNBA players do not get paid anywhere near what the NBA players receive, and therefore the Lynx organization would not have the same level of resources as the Timberwolves. Does the Lynx organization and do the Lynx players have a presence in terms of volunteering, philanthropy, community, participation? Because one of the complaints from the people the brothers that I talk to on the Vine is that they never see a lot of the professional athletes in the African American community. They might come in to get their haircut, they might come in to go to church once in a while, but they generally tend to live in Coon Rapids, or that's my favorite, in the far out suburbs like Eden Prairie, or they may live downtown or have an apartment. They may only live here part of the year when they're in season, as opposed to on a full-time basis. But should our audience be aware of things the Lynx are doing that may not be as well known in this area, either players or the organization? Do they have a charitable philanthropic presence?
So let me just talk about, I'm glad you brought that up. Back when I first started my Diamond in the Rough program, the Minnesota Lynx and head coach Brian Agler, who was also the GM at that time, were hugely supportive of the young ladies and the programming that we were doing. And they did things alongside of us, but for community service, as well as had a huge presence during our showcase and celebrity shootout, serving as celebrity coaches and being those I would say mentors per se to the young women that were the players that were selected to be diamonds. And we had a very great relationship with basketball community relations. So this is the community relations department of the Minnesota Lynx and the Timberwolves that would be kind of your first tier of requests, whether for when you would want to see your favorite players, excuse me, in your communities. And so that's something that's important for our listeners and our viewers to know, is that if you don't see your Lynx, then all you have to do is reach out to the community relations department to see when and where there might be availability. Now, I will say that this particular season was pretty hard to try to get a visibility outside of the season, because not only did we have more games on the Lynx on the WNBA schedule for all the teams, but you also had the Olympics and the Olympic break. And so, and then you had, for Minnesota, you had your head coach as the head coach for the Olympics. And Nafisa Collier, who, by the way, I want you to check out Fee Spitz on Inside News on our page, because she, her tunnel looks have been phenomenal. Shout out to Kimberly Stewart, her stylist. But I'll switch back to pivot back. But so it kind of makes it a little hard during the season for there to be a lot of visibility during the season. And then you're absolutely right. During the off season, they typically are either playing ball overseas or moving to their hometowns, and then that's where you're going to probably see more visibility of the professional players in their own hometowns during the off season. And then you also have a lot of coaches and players that are coaching at the collegiate level, and so they're going to be, doing that back and working with their teams. And so that is kind of why you don't see as much community engagement and the philanthropy. But I will also say this, you have a lot of players, male and female, and it's not that they don't want to be known when they're doing things because they don't want people to consistently be asking them for something. It's also because they don't necessarily want it to appear to be that it's performative, that's just, they're just doing it to be seen, and that's not important to them. It's more important to give and to serve in the way that they can, and it's not as important to be known that they're doing that. And I know that about other philanthropists as well, not just quote unquote stars or celebrities that are athletes. People just give because they want to give, and it's from their heart. It's not that they need to be seen.
For many of you super athletes, your height gives you away, okay, when you show out. But we would love to see more of you at Rondo Days, at Juneteenth, at the Selby Jazz Festival, and at other events. And they're welcome to come and get some hoe cakes and some hush puppies and some catfish and some ribs. At the recent Selby Jazz Festival, they had 110 vendors. Okay, they had entertainment all day. A lot of what was provided by Walker West Academy, which is an African-American founded music teaching school. And, there are thousands of people at those events. So just the mere presence and participation, I think, would be mutually beneficial, because a lot of them don't know much or get much of an education or an orientation about the town, about the history, about the legacy, about the community institutions, about the churches, about the sororities, the fraternities, the nonprofits. And we are a small community, probably number 50 in terms of the 50 top markets in the United States for media. But by the same token, we're also a very rich community in terms of our heritage, our legacy, our resilience, and the resources that are available within the community. So the Selby Jazz Festival, Rondo Days, Juneteenth, the Plymouth Avenue Festival put on by the Urban League, those are opportunities for us to really celebrate community unity. And I think it would be mutually beneficial for us to see them. Hopefully it would increase the interest among African American residents in buying season tickets or tickets to come out and support some of these athletes. And of course, everybody knows that Black women keep our skies from falling. So they would clearly be, only too welcome to be among us and to be respected. And we won't treat them as incognegros. Okay, we will applaud them and thank them for their presence. But
no doubt. And again, I think that it's real important that we understand the ebbs and flows of the season. Okay, with a lot of Minnesota, of course, we don't have as much warm weather as other parts of the country, and so when we do have things that are considered outdoor kind of festival type things, that many of them happen in late spring and summer, right? And maybe early fall. And guess when late spring, summer, and early fall are? Right in the midst of the WNBA season. And so I agree 1,000%. If we've got players from the team and front office staff from the team that reside year round in Minnesota, there's still other things that we can do, that they can do to be more engaged. And again, if you've got your organization has something that you would love for an appearance from one of the players, connect with the Minnesota Lynx. You can even connect with us, I'd be happy to help you get connected with who you want to get connected to. Just go to Coach Leah at insightnews.com, and that's CoachLeah at insightnews.com. And if you'd like me to help you get connected with some of your favorite players, and it doesn't have to be just the links, it can be anybody that's one of your favorite players from your favorite teams in the Twin Cities. I am more than happy to help you get connected with them if you're just having a lot of problems with that. But we will have to be realistic. We have to manage our expectations when it comes to the visibility during the season, because it's a very short season. Your schedule is impacted by so many different things. And so it's harder to be able to get out and about in the community. Now, I'm going to put a little more pressure on our Minnesota Timberwolves, because their season isn't during the late spring, of course, unless they go deep into the postseason and the summer and the early fall. And so those are some opportunities for our Minnesota Timberwolves to get out. And I'm going to shout out Kevin Garnett, because back in the day when we did have our Diamond Era program, he was very visible and very supportive and out there. And he had season. He was probably one of the first NBA player that had season tickets to a WNBA franchise. It was at his seats every game. And so big shout out to Kevin Garnett for that. But yeah, I'd love to see more Timberwolves, doing some community engagement and interacting, to your point, definitely. And more of our Twins and more of our Vikings. Now, I'll tell you about the Vikings. The Vikings have an opportunity on Tuesdays. That's their off day. And so if you reach out to their community relations team for the Vikings and make requests there, and not even just for the players, for the cheerleaders too. The cheerleaders have a dynamic, beautiful African-American coach. Her name escapes me at the moment, but she's dynamic, and she is actually the head coach of the Minnesota Viking cheerleaders. And so they're available for community engagement as well. You just got to put your request out there.
Let me make a counter offer. You're familiar with Frank White. Frank is a referee, referees all over the state.
I'm absolutely
wrote a book on blacks in baseball in Minnesota. Frank and I have done a joint presentation with a PowerPoint on the history of African Americans in the state of Minnesota and in the Twin Cities Black community. And if the opportunity should present itself where during orientation or, the preseason, when they gather all of the athletes and talk about what the expectations of the team are, I want to go out on a limb and speak for Frank and I and say we would be only too happy to come and talk to those in attendance about African American history in Minnesota and in the Twin Cities that might give them a better awareness of the environment, of the resilience, and the history and the legacy of the Black community here. And we just took a busload of teachers from Minneapolis on a bus tour of the Rondo community. And there's a national group called PERC, who, along with the Rondo Community Land Trust, we've done presentations and tours on that same topic, the history of African Americans in Minnesota, all the way back to the late 1700s, down through the Underground Railroad, Moses Dixon and St. Paul prior to the Civil War, to W.T. Francis, who was a civil rights attorney and one of the first ambassadors to Liberia, to Cap Wigington, who was the city architect who designed more than 50 buildings and structures, many of which still exist, down through I. Myrtle Carden, Gertrude Brown from Phyllis Wheatley, and Hallie Q. Brown, and Lena O. Smith, who was a female attorney who wore men's suits, practiced in Minneapolis, was a civil rights attorney, was on the board of the Urban League. So a lot of Black men and women who were pioneers. Whitney Young volunteered at the St. Paul Urban League before he became the youngest person hired at the National Urban League. And Roy Wilkins was the chair of the board of Hallie Q. Brown Community Center in St. Paul and the St. Paul Urban League before he became the national NAACP executive director. And then you have Gordon Parks and Hilda Brown, and the list just goes on and on and on of Black men and Black women who made national contributions. A. Philip Randolph organized the first March on Washington from the basement of the Union Depot in downtown St. Paul. And you know, there's just so much history here that even a lot of our children are unaware of, that Frank and I would welcome the opportunity to share in whatever time period or constraints or what have you is available, to try and help people gain a greater understanding of this environment, because some of the major season ticket holders for the WNBA are white women, okay? And the support that the WNBA gets from wherever it can get it is welcome. But I think anything we can do to build bridges or to exchange a connection between the African American community here in the metropolitan area and those players who have the privilege of coming in here and making major salaries to perform in professional athletics would be welcomed. And we want to remind people that you can vote by mail, you can vote in person at the Election Bureau in Hennepin County or in Ramsey County at 90 West Plato Boulevard. You can call the Secretary of State's office or go online, and they will mail you a mail-in ballot that you can put in the mail or that you can drop off on Election Day or in the mailbox or wherever you'd like. Because
I want to jump in here real quick. I want to jump in here real quick because we've got people that are watching us and listening to us, not just in the Twin Cities, but all over the world and other places in the country, especially, you know, I'm down here in Texas at the moment anyway. And today is the last day for Texans to register to vote. Okay. Now in Minnesota, there's an amazing opportunity that you can literally register to vote on the same day of voting, which is
Election Day.
So that's awesome. But Texas is not one of those states, people. So Texas, today is the day. Now, you can't just register to vote, people. Now, once we've gotten registered, we actually have to go vote and vote the entire ticket, because the lower you go down the ticket, the closest that person has to affecting your day-to-day life and livelihood. And so that is so very important right now, people. We make sure we get out to vote, make sure we register, make sure that if you've gotten, like you were saying, your mail-in ballots, make sure. There's so much voter suppression in so many of these countries, so many parts of the country, especially
38 states. 38 states have voter suppression. Yeah.
So much. And so we have got to make sure. And the other thing, and my pastor brought this up during his sermon the other week or just last week, is we need poll watchers, people, everywhere. So if you have the opportunity to be a poll watcher, please take that opportunity, because that is what's going to keep things fair, and that's what's going to keep people safe, is having the poll watchers. So if you are a volunteer, if you have any free time to be a poll watcher, this year is the year to be a poll watcher for sure.
Well, congratulations to Michelle Delicious, who is an election judge in Maryland this year, and is a frequent listener, contributor, follower. We ought to call her the tri-host, you know.
No doubt. So I've been asked to be in a poll worker this year as well. I'm not sure if my time will permit it, but if so, I'm there. I'm there all day, and I'm there till the polls close, and then until the last person votes. And sometimes, even though the polls close at 7, sometimes we're there till almost 10 o'clock because the line was out the door. And as long as you're in line by the time it closes, you can vote. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Coach Leah, I want to thank you for spending the entire hour with us and allowing me to question you. And I want to assure you that in the future, you'll have ample opportunity to ask me any questions that you have. I want to thank those people in our web, in our NNPA, in our YouTube, in our Facebook, in our KFAI, and other audiences for joining us today for a very enlightening conversation about, we've sort of opened the curtain on sports and talked about a lot of stuff that people might not be aware of, and we owe a debt of gratitude to you, Coach Leah Jean, for doing that.
Oh,
On behalf of Coach Leah Jean M. Denley, I'm Ndugu Yusef M. Jani, and we'd like to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Stay safe. God bless.
bye-bye.